Hello out there, and thank you all for tuning in, or perhaps you just happen to stop by our Facebook or YouTube channel. I'm going to share some insights with you all tonight about suffering and how it's possibly a good thing. One of my favorite pieces of writing was accomplished by John Donne, who was a 15th century writer. He lived from January 22nd, 1572 until March 31st, 1631. As I mentioned, he was a writer, a poet, a cleric. He was even the dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London for 10 years. He was an incredibly accomplished individual, and much of his writings are religious in nature. And I encourage you to seek him out, to go and look at some of the things that he's done, because it is some very deep reflections on the human existence, especially as we relate to God. One of the things that probably shaped and formed John Donne's life and writing style was that he wrote during the time of the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague, if you don't know, also known as the Black Plague or Black Death, began in the mid 1300s and lasted in these 10-year resurgences all the way until the late 1600s. To say that John Donne was well acquainted with death is probably an understatement. At one point, he even believed to have had the Black Plague and wrote some very deep, meaningful reflections on life and what that means for us and our relationship to God. One of these reflections comes in Meditation 17, which is probably his most well-known writing. In this, he reflects on what we do, and this is what we are going to look at tonight. It is a longer piece, and we can't focus on the entirety of this writing tonight, but I do encourage you to go out, seek it out, read the whole entirety of Meditation 17. Really good piece of writing and literature. So as I read this, it's important for you to know the ringing of the bells. You see, during this time frame, the local church bells would ring in order to signify the passing of someone, the ending of a funeral. And so, with this, you could imagine that during the bubonic plague and a time where mortality rates were extremely high, I mean, the Black Plague alone took between 75 million and 200 million lives during the course of its reign on this earth. And so we have this idea that even populations of towns would be reduced by 50%. It's no wonder that the ringing of church bells would become monotonous and meaningless to everyone who heard them continually throughout the day. And this is where John Donne writes a very meaningful lesson. He writes, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a cloud be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind. And therefore never sin to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Neither can we call this a begging of misery, or a borrowing of misery, as though we were not miserable enough of ourselves, but must fetch in more from the next house, in taking upon us the misery of our neighbors. Truly, it were an excusable covetousness, if we did, for affliction is a treasure, and scarce any man hath enough of it. No man hath affliction enough that is not matured and ripened by and made fit for God by that affliction. If a man carry treasure in a bullion, or in a wedge of gold, and have none coined into current money, his treasure will not defray him as he travels. Tribulation is treasure in the nature of it, but it is not current money in the use of it, except we get nearer and nearer our home, heaven, by it. Another man may be sick too, and sick to death, and this affliction may lie in his bowels, as gold in a mine, and be of no use to him. But this bell that tells me of his affliction digs out and applies that gold to me, if by this consideration of another danger I take my own into contemplation, and so secure myself by making my recourse to my God, who is our only security." Much like Dunn in his sermon, we are now more aware of our mortality. And although we may not have church bells continually ringing in our current situation, we do have the ticker at the bottom of our news feed letting us know cases and death tolls. And so maybe when we read these, instead of becoming inundated by the onslaught of information, we remember how fragile we are, how much we need God. And then, as John Donne mentions, when we are reminded, we make our recourse to God and cling to Him as our only security in an uncertain world. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Thank you for watching, and God bless.